What's up, BookTube? It's Leah Cooper, and today I am once again back to do a catch-up book reading wrap-up. Today I want to talk about all the books I read in September and October. So once again, I've been kind of AFK because of lots of big life changes. During September, I was partially out of town, across the country, working to find an apartment and help my partner find a job, and so I wasn't doing a ton of reading. And then in the second half of September and first half of October, I was really focused on finishing writing a book. Completely sucked up all of my time. Again, not doing a ton of reading. And then middle of October, I moved 2,000 miles across the country. So I'm here to talk about the handful of things I read. It's not as much as it could be. I think it's mostly audiobooks, but let's get into it. In the month of September, I finished one book. I was reading a couple of other things, but they didn't get done. The one thing I listened to in September was a multi-author short story anthology called Edge of Infinity, edited by Jonathan Strahan. I finally heard someone say his last name, and now I know I've been pronouncing it wrong in all of my reviews. So this is another installment in the Infinity collection, or the Infinity. It's a series of short story multi-author anthologies edited by Strahan, and I don't exactly know where this one fits in, but I think it's number 2, and it's really good. I listened to it on audiobook. The other ones I have read. I would recommend either way, whichever way you want to do it. This had a bunch of really interesting, captivating, kind of like solar system type of stories. I listened to it while going on a lot of walks, and I really loved it. I think I gave it 4.5 stars. Let me double check. I gave it 4.5 stars. The thing about Strahan's collections, and the Infinity collections in particular, is that I find very rarely is there a short story in the mix that doesn't work for me. Like, usually with multi-author, I mean, a lot of times with multi-author anthologies, they can be kind of hit or miss because there's like so many different authors and so many different styles. But Strahan's curation of who he puts in these anthologies is just so cohesive that it really does feel like all the stories kind of fit together, and they're just a delight to read. So if you're looking for some interstellar short science fiction, I would definitely check out any of the Infinity books. I have read 3. I've read Infinity Wars, Infinity's End, and now Edge of Infinity. And I would recommend all of them. Genuinely. Like, I think I would recommend any of them as just really great reads. In October, I actually did pretty good on the reading front. I read 7 things, but this is mostly, I think, me finishing books that I had started in previous months and finally getting around to finishing them. But hey, however it works out, right? So the first thing I finished in October was another audiobook that I started in August, but then I had to go back on a wait list to get it, to finish it, and that is Vita Nostra by Marina Dychenko and Sergei Dychenko. Probably butchering their names a little bit. This is a Russian speculative novel translated, and I listened to the English translation on audiobook. I heard about this book from Rhea the Bookfinch. They've mentioned it in a few, I think, like book recommendations videos, and I just needed something to listen to on audio, so I snapped it up, and it was okay. I think I gave it a 3-star. I like the beginning better than the rest of the book. It's one of those books with kind of like I think you could call it a dark academia vibe. It's about a girl who is forced into a bizarre school where they're teaching students to become something other than human. I think that's the best way I can describe it. And the thing that just didn't interest me is the reveal. So like the thing, like the man behind the curtain, the thing behind the curtain, the big plot reveal, I just didn't find it very interesting. And I think it's just because I'm not the right kind of nerd for it. I don't know. It was just kind of like, oh, that's what all this is about. It just didn't excite me. And I'm sure it would excite a lot of other people. I know Rhea really likes this book, but it just I was kind of like, meh. I think the writing's very nice, and I thought the characters were pretty interesting. The romance, I take it or leave it, but like, I liked the protagonist. I was just kind of like, I just wanted more. I wanted, the first half of the book is like so mysterious, and like it's so, you're just so, what's going on? What does it all mean? And then when the reveal happens, you're just kind of like, that's what it means? That's just, what? Like, I don't know. It didn't land for me. But if you're looking for something kind of dark academic and something very, very weird and speculative, you might give it a go and see if it's for you. The other thing I finished right at the start of October is a book I left in Washington, and that is Simon the Coldheart by Georgette Hare. So this was on my 15 books to read in 2021 TBR. So I did get one bit of goal done in September and October. That was this book. It took me a very long time to read this, even though it was relatively short. Georgette Hare is kind of like the grandmother of historical romance. She wrote like a lot of Regency romances and just other historical romances. This is like a, what would this be? Henry V era romance. It's about a guy who's the bastard son of a knight who becomes a squire and then becomes a knight and then becomes like King Henry's right-hand man as he's trying to conquer the the Normans? Is that right? That's not right. Normandy? When he's trying to conquer Normandy? Is that what it is? So Georgette Hare is problematic. I did not realize that when I got this book. I remember Georgette Hare showed up on a list of like kind of historical or Regency romance authors you have to read if you're a fan of the genre. And I did used to read a lot of Regency romance, and so I picked up this one, which is not a Regency, but I got it really cheap at the used bookstore. And then later I found out she was quite anti-Semitic, and I was like, oh. But I had this on my shelf. She's dead. She's not profiting off of this. But, you know, disclaimer. And this book popped up in a random number selection to create my 15 books to read this year, TBR. And so I decided, well, I'll give it a try, and this will be my one Georgette Hare, and yeah. I didn't like this. The romance, I hate it. It's, I mean, I guess product of its time. It's very, it's so sexist and misogynistic. And the heroine is almost likable until she falls in love with the hero, and then she becomes just a pushover. And then there's this the other female character, because there's only two, is like really into abusive husbands. It's weird. It's not romantic. I guess it's like truly a novel trying to glorify the age of chivalry, which is gross. And I mean, I guess it's competently written. That's about the nicest thing I can say. I gave it a 1 star. I didn't like it. I wouldn't recommend it. Don't read it. Don't do it. Anyway, okay, moving on. I will not be reading any more Georgette Hare. The next thing I finished was a short novella, and that is When the Tiger Came Down the Mountain, or When the Tiger Came Down the Mountain by Nevo. This is a Tor.com novella. It is a fantasy. I want to say it's kind of like a fantasy world inspired by like Nepalese and China. Like I feel like there's this core of like mammoth writers who I suspect are kind of inspired by like the Nepalese people, but I might be wrong. Don't quote me on that. That was just like the impression I got while reading the book. It is about a scholar who is traveling around their monastic order. In their monastic order, they collect stories and record them. They are traveling in the mountains with one of these mammoth writers. and they are going to get snowed in, and then they're confronted by 3 shape-shifting tiger sisters who want to eat them, and the scholar starts telling a love story, but that tells the tale of a love between a tiger shifter and a scholar, and the sisters start correcting the story, and it's lovely. I gave it like 5 stars. I loved it. If you want, it is a story within a story, and it's one of those ones where the story that's within the story is actually like as good as the story itself. Like, it's super good. There's a couple quotes from it I had to highlight on Goodreads so that I wouldn't forget them, because they make my little heart, they kind of like hit me in like the romantic feels kind of place. I loved it. I love the interplay between like the tigers and the scholar, and like the scholar being like, well, this is just how it was told to me, and then the scholar's being like, this isn't how it was at all. No tiger shift, you know, this is just how humans remember it. And there's a little bit of like that 1001 Arabian Nights kind of feel to it, because it's the scholar trying to put off the inevitability of being eaten by a bunch of tiger shifting sisters. So I loved it. I highly recommend it. If you're looking for like a little fantasy novella to read in an afternoon, check it out, because it's great. After that, I listened to another novella, but on audiobook this time, and that was The Orphans of Raspay by Lois McMaster Bujold. This is, I'm going to have to check, the 7th book in the Penric and Desdemona, or 7th novella in the Penric and Desdemona series, which is a series of novellas set in the world of the 5 gods, which is the same universe as The Curse of Chalion, but set, I think, a couple centuries before The Curse of Chalion. And I love it. I love this series. I love Penric and Desdemona, and I think their relationship is great. Penric is a sorcerer, Desdemona is his demon. In the last book, he got married, and in this book, he's traveling home after going on a mission, and he's besieged by pirates, and he kind of adopts 2 orphan girls who have also been kidnapped by pirates. And it is charming and sweet and delightful and like found family, and it's great. I love it. If you're looking for like a fantasy series of novellas set in a really cool world with a great like sorcerer or wizard character who just like is a little hapless and ends up on these wild adventures, try this series. That's really all I can say, because I'm, 7 novellas into it at this point. And then after that, I had one more book out from the library, like in physical format, that I had to get read and returned before I moved 2,000 miles across the country, and that was The Last Wish by Andrzej Sapkowski. I don't know how to say his name. It's a collection of short stories, and it's the first book in the Witcher series. It's generally the one you're supposed to read first, I think, from what I have been able to gather. It makes sense, because it's like the short stories in this do follow. You can definitely see that like the season 1 of the show is very closely following this short story collection, and a couple of the short stories follow the first video game. So I'm a big fan of the games. I have watched the show. I quite like the show. It is just fun. I'm currently rewatching the show and making my partner watch it with me, and I am trying to read a couple of the books before season 2 comes out. That way, I kind of got an idea of what the story is. I'm just kind of curious. They're not like the best thing ever. They're kind of laughably 90s in a way. Like, man, some of the female character outfit descriptions in this first one are so, like, when you play the first game and you're playing this fantasy game, and like you see the female NPC costumes, and they're just like, oh, that's so stupid. But then like you read the descriptions of some of the female character clothing descriptions in the book, and you're like, oh yeah, that's like exactly what the video game is. Wow, that's dumb. they're like laughably similar. Like, I don't know if you've ever played like an early 2000s fantasy game and you've just seen some of like the costuming choices. They're just laughably weird and like ahistorical and like rooted in, I don't know what, like Dungeons and Dragons what the fuckery or whatever. I mean, I think that might be an insult to Dungeons and Dragons, to be honest. But then you read the book and you're like, wow, no, they're that bad, and he makes sure to describe them. So it's just kind of like dumb entertainment. That's kind of how these books feel. Like, they're not they're not great or anything. And, you know, I think they really highlight kind of actually the character work that the voice actor did for the video game specifically. I feel like he really brought the character of Geralt to life with his voice acting. And that's that kind of idea of what The Witcher is has like infiltrated our cultural idea of what it is, and it is really, really rooted in more of that man's work, artistry, etc. But anyways, they're like entertaining, but they're not great. But I got it read, and I got the book returned to the library before my move, literally like a day or two before I moved out of Washington. So hooray! And I've got the second one, the second like short story anthology out from the library, and I'm going to be reading that sometime next month, I think. And then that brings us to the last two things I read this month. Wow, and I finished these on the same day. I forgot that. One of them is an audiobook. That is The Dream Gatherer by Kristen Britton. Wow, say that 5 times fast. This is a short story collection in the world of the Green Rider. It takes place after Firebrand and before the newest book that just came out, which I think is called Winter Light. And it was released as like a 20th anniversary special. And so it contains, I think, 3 short stories and one, I would call it probably a novelette. And the 3 short stories just take place in the world of the Green Rider, kind of well predating the events of the book series. And then the novelette follows Kerrigan's best friend as she returns to Celium, and it involves the Barry sisters, who were from the first book, and a little adventure at their house, which is very charming. And it was really cool to see the Barry sisters again, because they were some really awesome side characters from the first book who we've seen hints of here and there, but you know, we got to see them in an actual little novelette, and we got to see the characters and wacky, zany adventures, and it was just fun. And so I did really like this. I listened to it on audiobook, like the rest of the series. And yeah, that's really all I can say. It's one of those for the fans type of thing. And then the last thing I read at the end of the month was another novella, and that was The Tea Master and the Detective by Elliot de Boudard. This was the first book I checked out from my new library that's literally like 500 steps from my apartment. Yes, I got 2 Elliot de Boudard novellas to read, because I walked into the sci-fi section, and Boudard, it's right at the beginning, and I saw them and I snatched them. And this is set in the, I think, is it pronounced Juyu? I don't know how to pronounce it. World of, it's like a Vietnamese inspired sci-fi empire with sentient mind ships that are somewhat human, and people have bots and overlays. It's a really, really cool universe. I've read a bunch of short stories kind of set or inspired by this universe in Baudard's short story collection, which is called Of Wars and Memories and Starlight, I think. I believe I have a standalone video review talking about that collection. If I do, I'll link it up in the cards. And I do love the universe. The Tea Master and Detective is fun. It's kind of a Sherlockian, loosely inspired mystery with a mind ship, kind of as Watson, and a investigator, kind of as Holmes. And I really enjoyed it. I think I gave it 4 stars. And that was everything I managed to read in October. Not too bad, actually. Like, I managed to like wrap up a bunch of stuff. I got in 1 book off my TBR. As for my other challenges, I didn't really do so well. Most of what I read was from the library. I think everything might have been from the library. I read a lot of novellas in October, which also contributed to like how many books I read, which was 7, but they were mostly short, which is okay. But it doesn't align with my yearly goals. So that being said, I did overall quite like everything I read in October, with like really the big glaring Simon the Coldheart being the oddball out of all of this. So that's not too bad. I won't complain. And I've kind of, since I've been able to read a lot of novellas that I actually quite enjoyed, it's kind of, it really has helped me kick the bit of a reading slump I was in from all the stress of like packing and moving and writing and everything like that. So yeah. Thanks for hanging out with me, talking about books. Let me know down below if you've read any of these books, what you thought of them, or if you're thinking about picking them up. What do you think of Georgette Hare? Feel free to let me know down below. I know she's very, very loved, but ugh, doesn't hold up anymore, in my humble opinion. And there we have it. Hopefully next week I will be back with another video of some kind. I don't know what. I would really like to finish off the rest of this year with a video a week. Maybe even like a video on the same day every week. I know. But now that I have my own place and I am working from home and I have my whole apartment that I could theoretically film in, maybe there'll even be a variety of content. I don't know. One can dream. If you missed it, last week I did post my wrap-up, my summer reading wrap-up, where I talked about all the books I read in June, July, and August, which was not many, but a few. I'll leave that linked up in the cards and down below if you are interested in checking it out. And I'll see you guys later. Cheers!